You didn't lose them. You lost who you were when you were with them, the way you laughed differently, the things you started caring about, the version of yourself that only existed in that specific orbit, the one who had a we, who had a place to belong inside another person's story. That version is gone now, and no one warned you to grieve it. This is why breakups feel catastrophic even when you intellectually know you'll survive. It's not just heartbreak. It's closer to something that psychology has a name for: identity death. And once you understand what's actually dying, you will stop asking yourself why you can't just move on. You will understand, for the first time, what you're actually being asked to do. In the 1980s, psychologists Arthur and Elaine Aron proposed what's now called self-expansion theory. The core idea is deceptively simple. Humans are fundamentally motivated to grow, and one of the fastest, most powerful mechanisms for growth is romantic love. When you enter a close relationship, you don't just gain a partner. You begin absorbing them, their knowledge, their worldview, their habits, their social circles. All of it slowly becomes part of your self-concept. The Arons called this process inclusion of the other in the self. You can visualize it as two circles, overlapping at the center. The longer and deeper the relationship, the more those circles share the same space. And here's what the research confirms. Falling in love literally expands you. A prospective study by Aron and colleagues tracked students who fell in love during a single semester. Over 10 weeks, those individuals showed measurable growth in their self-concept, more roles, more confidence, more identified traits. Love makes the self feel bigger. But here is the side of the theory no one talks about enough. When that relationship ends, the self contracts. The expansion collapses. Research by Slaughter, Gardner, and Finkel, published in the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, found that breakups consistently produce what they called reduced self-concept clarity, a measurable drop in how clearly and consistently a person can describe who they are. Not just sadness, not just loneliness, structural confusion about the self. And that confusion, the study found, was the single strongest predictor of emotional distress after a breakup. More than the length of the relationship, more than how deeply people had been in love. You are not confused because you are weak. You are confused because the architecture of your identity has been partially dismantled. Now consider this carefully. Helen Fisher, a neuroscientist and anthropologist at Rutgers University, used functional MRI to scan the brains of 15 young adults who had recently experienced an unwanted breakup, yet still reported being intensely in love with the person who had left. When these individuals were shown photographs of their ex-partners, specific regions of the brain lit up with striking consistency: the ventral tegmental area, the nucleus accumbens, the prefrontal cortex. These are dopamine-rich regions at the center of the brain's reward and motivation system. They are also the exact regions activated during cocaine addiction. Fisher's conclusion, published in the Journal of Neurophysiology in 2010, was explicit. Intense romantic love functions like a natural addiction, and a breakup biologically is withdrawal. This is not metaphor. The corticotrophin-releasing hormones that surge during drug withdrawal are the same ones that activate when attachment is severed. The restless sleep, the inability to concentrate, the intrusive thoughts, the desperate urge to make contact, these are withdrawal symptoms. They follow the same neurological logic as any powerful substance your brain has learned to depend on. And just like withdrawal, they get worse before they get better. Research from the University of Arizona led by psychologist David Sbarra, found a linear relationship between time and healing. The longer the separation, the less activity in the brain region associated with attachment. Fisher's own data confirmed this. The more days that pass since rejection, the quieter the neural craving. The brain, given enough uninterrupted silence, will begin to dismantle the connections it no longer needs. That word, uninterrupted, matters more than most people realize. There is a reason no contact is one of the most psychologically sound responses to the end of a serious relationship, not as a tactic, not as a game, as neuroscience. Neuroscientists describe a process called synaptic pruning. Neural pathways that are no longer being reinforced begin to weaken. The brain literally dismantles connections it is inducing. Every time you check your ex's social media, reread all messages, or make contact, however brief, you fire those pathways again. You restart the clock. You flood the system with cortisol and dopamine in the same toxic loop the brain was trying to exit. Research published in the Journal of Neuroscience showed that romantic rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Continued contact in the aftermath of a breakup keeps the pain system in a state of chronic activation. It elevates cortisol, disrupts sleep, impairs working memory. A 2021 fMRI study found that individuals who had experienced a recent breakup show measurably reduced prefrontal cortex engagement during high cognitive tasks compared to those in stable relationships. Heartbreak doesn't just hurt, it temporarily impairs how clearly you can think. No contact is not a wall you build to keep someone out. It is the silence your brain needs to begin rebuilding what it lost. Without that silence, the pruning never begins. The self never has room to re-emerge. While the brain is going through withdrawal, it is also doing something else. Something that can be genuinely destabilizing if you don't understand it. It is rewriting the past. Psychologists call this rosy retrospection, a documented cognitive bias in which memories of past experiences are recalled as more positive than they actually were. The prefrontal cortex, under emotional stress, actively suppresses unpleasant details while amplifying moments of warmth, intimacy, and comfort. The result is that you are not grieving a real person. You are grieving an edited version of them. You are mourning a highlight reel your own mind assembled from pain. There is also a reverse mechanism at work, loss aversion, a well-established principle from behavioral psychology rooted in Nobel Prize-winning research by Daniel Kahneman, which means that the pain of losing something feels significantly more intense than the pleasure of having had it. When a relationship ends, the brain calculates not just what you had, but what you can no longer have. That gap activates a level of distress disproportionate to the relationship itself. This is why you sometimes miss people who, if you are honest, made your life smaller. The mind is not grieving the reality of who they were. It is grieving the removal of someone who had become fused with your sense of self. That is a crucial distinction. You are not grieving them. You are grieving the version of you that existed in their presence, and those are not the same loss. And now comes the part that changes everything. What psychology calls post-traumatic growth is a documented, measurable phenomenon. Researchers Tedeschi and Calhoun defined it as the positive psychological change that can emerge directly from the struggle with highly challenging circumstances. It is not the absence of pain, it is what crystallizes inside the pain because of it. Research by Lewandowski and Bissocco found something that at first seems counterintuitive. Individuals who ended relationships that had provided low self-expansion relationships where they had actually become smaller, quieter, less themselves, reported greater self-growth post-dissolution than those who had never been in the relationship at all. Some losses leave you more than you started with. The self-concept that collapses after a breakup is not simply restored, it is rebuilt, reconstructed with the materials of everything the relationship taught you, who you can be, what you need, where you will not go again, and what you are now capable of carrying alone. The clarity that eventually returns is not the same clarity as before. It is sharper. It is yours in a way that shared identity rarely is. You are not recovering from a breakup. You are recovering a self. The disorientation, the fog, the weeks of not recognizing your own preferences, your own rhythms, all of it is the in-between state of someone whose old architecture has fallen and whose new one has not yet stood up. That liminal space has always been the most uncomfortable place in any transformation. It has also always been where the real change lives. You are not broken, you are between versions. There is a kind of grief that has no funeral and no name on the card. The grief for who you were with someone, for the specific love you had, the references only the two of you shared, the future you had unconsciously started building inside a mind that no longer exists. That grief is real. It deserves the same weight and patience you would give any other loss. But underneath it, and this is the part worth staying for, underneath the collapse of who you were with them, something is waiting. Not a rebuilt version of your old self, something that couldn't have existed without the fracture. The version of you that now knows what it costs to disappear inside another person. The version that has crossed a silence and come out the other side with a clearer sense of what is yours and what was borrowed. That version is worth grieving for. If this reached you in a place you don't usually let things reach, consider leaving a comment, like and subscribe if you want to keep going deeper.